Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Today's guest is a business performance psychologist. He's a former professional cricket player and the founder of Sporting Edge. He has spent the last decade researching the mindset needed to thrive in adversity, and he shares his knowledge on his own podcast, Inside the Mind of Champions. Welcome to the Sports Management Podcast, Jeremy Snape.
Thanks very much for the introduction. Great to be with you.
Great to have you on. So, first of all, how are you?
Going well, thanks. Yeah, it's been a challenging year, hasn't it? I don't know where your listeners are all tuning in from, but certainly in the UK, we've had some pretty strict lockdown regulations. Children homeschooled for quite a while. So we're really looking forward to things starting to lift a little bit now. Most of the vaccines are starting to roll out. I think we're ahead of the curve a little bit there. I've had my first one, so awaiting the second, but we've just been allowed out into other people's gardens for a drink and a barbecue. So that's a good sign of things to come for the summer, hopefully.
Definitely. And it really feels like better times are ahead now. We stay positive on that. But you're a business performance psychologist. What does a business performance psychologist do?
Yeah, there's lots of titles, isn't there? I guess my fascination started with performance, really, as a cricketer in my own career. You mentioned in the introduction, I played 19 years as a professional athlete, played for England, travelled the world. So I had the chance to test myself out against the best in the world. And some days I did well, and lots of days I did badly. And the biggest difference was, I guess, in my head, my mindset. And sometimes I believed I could do it, sometimes I couldn't. So I became fascinated about psychology and sport, first of all. But then after studying a master's degree in sports psychology, I started to work across with businesses, because it seemed to me that, the corporate sponsors that were around the sporting arena, the executives there seemed to have exactly the same challenges that the leaders and coaches in sport were having. They were trying to get the best out of themselves and be confident through uncertainty and pressure. They were trying to recruit and manage talent and bring teams together, and help teams to adapt as they were going through different competitions or different, challenges in the working environment. So I guess my fascination is in the overlap between sport, business, and psychology. That's really where it is. And I spend a lot of my time working with leaders. So my own personal experience of being a captain and a player has given me some empathy with people that are trying to work through pressure situations. The master's degree gave me some academic frameworks to work against from a psychology perspective. And then my consulting with CEOs and senior teams through Sporting Edge has given me a chance to understand the business pressures that people see. So it's quite a varied career, but I absolutely love it, because it's all about people and trying to help them to improve.
Yeah, that sounds really, really interesting. And you mentioned mindset, and you have spent a lot of time on researching what is a winning mindset. So why is mindset so important, and how can you train it?
Yeah, well, I think, to me, there's probably been 3 generations of advancement, especially in sport. The first one was around fitness. We had fitness trainers coming from the army or from, different sports, traveling the world, and we were jumping in ice baths and making our skin folds, reduced, and everyone was training to the extreme to try and get those marginal gains. So I think that was the first wave. Then I think technology kicked on, and we had 10 to 15 years of analytics and software and measurement, really. So we could start to see, where the football players were running on the pitch, or we could measure heart rate, or we could stop video and see where the ball might track to and things like that. So all of that analytical software started to bring loads of data and analytics into sport. And that was a major advancement from a strategic and a technical perspective, because now everyone could see, cameras around them, and they could improve their techniques. But to me, still the biggest opportunity for improvement is mindset, because, I think some days my technique was excellent and my strategy was great, but my mindset just didn't believe that I could do it on a particular day. So the only way that I can explain my sort of ups and downs in my career, because my technique was fairly solid, but one week to the next was largely due to my mindset. So I've met a lot of people and interviewed a lot of top champions around the world, and I don't think anyone's got a massive issue with being beaten by a better opposition. But I think lots of the time we get beaten, we actually beat ourselves by thinking inefficiently or not backing ourselves, not having the confidence to take risks. And that has the double effect, because we underperform, but then we also regret the fact that we should have taken risks and been bolder, and we start to beat ourselves up for not being confident enough. So to me, mindset is the next frontier in performance. It's the bit we can't measure, so that's why it's the last one to come through. But it has a transformational effect, not only in our performance, but also in our enjoyment, because when we've got that negative critic in our head, even when we lift a trophy and we're being critical of ourselves, it's still not that pleasurable a situation. But I think if we can combine better performance and a more enjoyable experience, then that to me is the winning mindset and that ability to learn that. And sadly, we don't learn these skills in school. We have to learn them through experience. But from my experience, lots of these elements like confidence and focus and resilience can actually be taught and learnt. And I think, again, that's the sort of next frontier for us in the area of mindset.
Yeah, and as you said, it can't be taught in school, but I mean, you have a master's degree and you also have your professional career to look back to and draw experience from. Would you say that both are necessary, or is one more important than the other in order to train your mindset?
Well, I think we've all got a mindset, like we've all got a body, and lots of us spend time training our body or eating healthily or going to the gym or exercising. And of course, when we train our body, that has positive, impact on our brain. But there are actually activities and skills that you can develop, to strengthen your mindset, just the way you set goals, the way you reframe setbacks, the language, you speak to yourself. Those kind of skills you don't need any master's degree for. They're just, frameworks that people can develop in the same way that you'd build a technique in ice hockey or American football or cricket. So I think the challenge is that they've not really been that clear, and psychology was always seen as a separate thing to sport. It's like don't go there, it's a bit sensitive. But to me, sports psychology is sports thinking. Now, who doesn't want to think effectively when they're playing sport? That's part of us being human and trying to compete. So I think I'm very passionate about interviewing the world's best performers, using my own experience and, researching these topics to try and break things down into a practical toolkit that normal people can use, whether you're a student, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a senior executive, or whether you're an international coach or professional athlete. That we've all got the same mindset, we've all got the same brain, and it's about trying to enhance our mindset, the way we think and the way we approach our performance to be the very best it can be. And that's not something that you go on a 1 week course and all of a sudden you've got a six pack for your brain. This is something that, is a lifelong investment and a lifelong learning sort of quest. And that again is fascinating, learning about yourself, learning to become more resilient and more confident. And these things happen naturally over time. But like anything, if we can accelerate them and grow our self-awareness and, improve our performance, then it's only going to benefit us.
Definitely. As I said in the introduction, that you have been researching the mindset needed to thrive in adversity. If we look back to this year and 2020 also, it was definitely filled with adversity for many people. So how have you seen this last year been, and what difficulties are people experiencing, and how can a positive mindset help?
Well, I think a positive mindset is essential. There's a lot of research to suggest that optimism is one of the key drivers of resilience. We have to have hope that tomorrow is going to be better. We have to have hope that, we can recover in our businesses or we can rebuild our careers. The Olympians have to have hope that the Olympics are going to happen and their training is worthwhile. So I think I think that's a critical element. I think so many of us have seen novelty, a new situation that they've never seen. That can be stressful. We've seen uncertainty. We don't know when these changes are going to stop and we're going to get back to normal. Uncertainty can be a big stressor. And the lack of control can be another key stressor in this. I can't do anything now that stops this pandemic. I can, do things in my own day and in my own house and in my own sort of well-being and choices. But we often worry about the threat of what might happen down the line. And these things are out of our control. These are pandemic sort of, even the virologists don't know, even the governments don't know. So it's really important that in that context, when we feel like we've lost control, we've lost our routine, and we've lost the sort of steps that we had in place towards our goals, whether they're personal goals or career goals or relationship goals, whatever they might be, they've been pulled away and we've been knocked to the bottom again. So I guess it's the first thing is to make sure that we've take control of our own lives and say, well, I can't influence the government. I can't influence the virus. What I can influence is my mindset, my morning routine, how I set up my day, who I speak to, whether I go easy on myself or whether I'm beating myself up every day, and whether I'm helping other people, because even when we don't feel like we're adding value ourselves because we're not doing our normal work, we can still help other people. And I think that's a really critical element as well. So I think reframing the situation, is absolutely essential. And then I think it's about, resetting those goals, making sure that, we've got a goal in sight, even if our long-term aspiration might be to set up our own business or become a CEO of a major sporting franchise. That can still be the dream goal, but we've really got to focus on what we can do in the next month or the next 3 months, because that's a bit more tangible. And that's where we should put most of our energy rather than wasting it on what could have happened or what should have happened, in a different time.
One step at a time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about adversity, and all people have had some bumps on the road along the way. And one story that you have shared is when you were playing cricket in India in 2001 and you choked under pressure in front of 120,000 people. Can you explain how you felt and how you moved on from that and what you learned?
Firstly, thanks very much for reminding me of that horror moment in my career. But yeah, I guess for me, I'm very happy talking about it because I think we all face those things. And whether you're out in the middle of a cricket pitch in India in front of a huge crowd live on television, as you remind me, or whether you're studying for an exam and you sit there and your mind goes blank, or you're doing a sales pitch and you make a mistake in the first line. We all have those feelings of panic and like we can't cope. And I guess the physiological sensations are sweaty palms, a racing heart rate. Our vision goes a bit sort of narrow and we lose that ability to see the bigger picture. We get butterflies in our stomach. And really that's our body preparing us for a pressure situation. Now, when we were cavemen, that would have been to try and evade a predator. But of course, that was a threat to our lives. But we've reinterpreted that in the modern world to be a threat to our self-esteem, to our status, or to our, reputation. And if I fail in this sort of pitch, or if I fail in this sports match, my life's not going to be worth living. The shame will be too much. So we start to think about the consequences of failure and what the terrible, we're going to be thrown in a dungeon and never play sport again, or our business is going to collapse if this next 2 minutes doesn't go perfectly. And as a result of that, our brain starts to pick up there's a threat. And then it starts to activate the fight and flight response, which triggers all of these physiological symptoms because we've triggered the stress. And then our body thinks it's got to get ready to run away from a saber-toothed tiger. But of course, those days are long gone. And all we've got to do is actually relax and try and perform under pressure. So I think acknowledging that when you go into some of these high stakes moments, your body's going to start feeling different. You're going to feel butterflies in your stomach, but that's the blood leaving your stomach and moving to your muscles because you think you've got to run and you've got to prime yourself for physical activity rather than a communication or whatever it might be. So somebody gave me some good advice. I speak a lot at conferences around the world, and somebody said to me, the timeline is exactly the same. You book the speech, you're really excited about it. You fly and you get ready and you think it's all good. And then the night before the speech, you start getting really nervous. You wake up in the morning, you feel sick. You go to the conference venue or whatever it might be. You see how big it is. You think, oh God, I don't know if I can do this. Is there a side door I can run out of? People start to come on. You think you're going to forget what you're going to say. You wonder if the technology is going to work with your slides and presentation. And then just as they're announcing your name, you get a lump in your throat and you don't think you're going to be able to speak properly. You walk up on stage, your heart's pounding, and that's the moment when you've got to say, all of that happens every time I speak. Every time I speak. So that isn't a warning sign that this is impending doom. This is the countdown clock for me giving my best performance. That's my body saying, are you ready for this? Have you got enough blood going around your muscles to get up on stage? And is your brain fired up to be sharp enough and focused enough to deliver it with good timing? So I think what I've learned about the high performers is they don't worry when they feel those symptoms. They actually embrace it and say, yeah, that's great. That's me being part of, this big performance. And they interpret it as excitement and preparation rather than dread and, a catastrophic warning signs that things are going to go wrong. So yeah, I think everyone faces pressure. Me having that setback in India, another key thing about setbacks is, do you see them that you have failed globally as a person? So you might play a bad shot in cricket. You say the wrong thing in a meeting. Does that make you a bad person in total for the rest of your life? Or do you isolate it to say, I said the wrong thing at 12 in that one meeting, and I can improve that next time. I'll never say that again. I need to think about this more diplomatically, and then I can learn and improve and be better. So the people who are really resilient after setbacks tend to isolate them to say it was a specific skill or action at a specific time, and it's something that I can improve myself through coaching and practice. So that's a really healthy thing, because now I'm not a bad person. I just said, I'm not a failure. I just failed in that moment. So they can all of a sudden coach themselves and come back from it. Whereas somebody who makes a mistake, misses a penalty and says, I'm rubbish at sport, that's a global belief now that's going to last forever and there's nothing I can do to change it. So it all comes back to having that growth mindset that we can constantly improve ourselves day after day. And we learn from both our great experiences and our setbacks. And I think both of those things are true.
Definitely. So many great things and so many insightful things. And we talked before about embracing the feeling, not be afraid of it. We said to take one step at a time. Any other tips and tricks to encourage a winner's mind before we move on to the second segment?
Yeah, so I guess, we're all quite ambitious and we want things now. We've got this sort of short-term, immediate gratification. And I think that comes from social media. We send something, we want, likes and tweets and reposts back. So all of that stuff is shortening the timeline. But really, we've got to be very patient, because that's the way high performance develops. You don't get a beach body by going to the gym once. You don't build a really successful business by doing one sale. It's about doing this time after time after time. So I think the first thing is about patience and setting out some longer term goals and setting out a sort of steady roadmap of how you're going to achieve it. That's probably the first thing. But then I think we should also, and we don't do this very often, I don't think, we look back and say, this is where I've come from. This is what I've achieved. It's almost like you're climbing up a mountain. And if you look down over the edge, you'd probably be surprised at how far you've traveled, to today. So I think having that ability to look back and say, 6 months ago, we didn't even have a website or a brochure or a business, or 6 months ago, I couldn't lift these weights and do these exercises, or I couldn't do this, special trick with my hockey stick or whatever it might be. And looking back at the progress that you're making, I think is really important. So look forward and be patient, look back and be proud. And then I think the other thing in looking back is making sure that you're focusing on your strengths, because, I think when we do get under pressure, we start doing crazy things. It's like when you lose your car keys and you start running back into the house and looking in drawers that you've never even been in for 6 months. You do irrational things. And I think sometimes when we're under pressure, we need to stay close to our strengths and say, this is what I'm good at. This is what our business is good at. This is why we're different. And let me focus in around those rather than seeing something on the internet and just deciding we're going to change direction all of a sudden. I think sometimes our strengths, are the key to us, because we get most enjoyment there when we're delivering our strengths, and we also get the biggest impact, whether it's in sport or business.
So be patient, don't be afraid to look back, and excellence takes time.
Absolutely, yeah. Good lessons.
In the second segment, I want to get to know you a little bit more. Can you give like a brief background of yourself? We have talked about it. You have a master's degree, you have been a professional cricketer, but just a short story of where you started until where you are today.
Yeah, well, I've got an elder brother. He's 3 years older than me. We used to play cricket in the garden. It was just for fun. My dad sent me off to a training camp to get me out of the way. I think he was, trying to do some DIY at home, and I was getting in the way. So I ended up going to this cricket coaching sort of clinic in the local town. And it turned out to be a trial for the local provincial cricket team. And the sort of coach asked me to stay back at the end of the session. And I'd been selected into this team that I didn't know I was on trial for, and that was age 11. And I guess that took me through then age 11, age 13. I captained the England team at 15, the junior England team, and signed professionally at 16. But I was always keen, through my parents' guidance, actually, to keep my education going alongside my sport. So I was very lucky to go off to university and do various things, then. And I think that's been very helpful for me, because I've always had a wider perspective than sport. And I think, for your listeners, when you're trying to make it as a professional athlete, you have to be almost obsessed and laser focused. But what I would say is, if you do get the opportunity to study alongside your sport, it really gives you some stability when the sport comes to an end. I was very lucky that I played for nearly 20 years professionally, but not everyone's that lucky, with injury and selection and whatever it might be. So you always need a backup plan. And I always tried to keep friends and family and, entrepreneurs and mentors outside of my sport, because it really helped me to see a broader picture. And I had a wider perspective rather than just seeing myself as a cricketer and that's all I was. I always wanted to have a wider network and go into different fields. So that's I guess, the platform that gave me the chance to set up Sporting Edge and then have a second career that I enjoy as much as my first.
Yeah, so Sporting Edge is your own founded company. Can you tell us a little bit more what you're doing with that company?
Yeah, so I was very lucky, having played and then studied a master's degree. I set the business up because I really wanted to help elite teams to try and get this winning mindset. So I was able to work with the South African cricket team, the Sri Lankan cricket team, some teams in this Indian Premier League, which is a huge league in the short format of the game in India. I've coached Premier League soccer teams, England rugby. So I've been very lucky to work with those elite teams in sport. And what I've done over the last 10 years is interview the world's top coaches, the world's top athletes, neuroscientists, military leaders, communication experts, about how do you build a high performance system. Now, all of those interviews, all those video interviews are available in Sporting Edge's membership. So Sporting Edge is about, as you mentioned earlier, the podcast is called Inside the Mind of Champions. And I try and interview these world-class experts to find out how they did it and what secrets they've got that we can translate across into our own lives and our own businesses that we can improve. So many of these high performance principles are pretty simple, really, but you've just got to have the discipline and focus to keep doing them. So Sporting Edge is either, is access to this world-class content library, and I can either present it in speeches and webinars, or we've got some digital programs and a membership club where people can actually access all these videos. So for example, if you type in goal setting into our members platform, you would get 60 world-class experts telling you how to set goals, and it gives you a great framework for developing high performance. And that could be on sleep, feedback, strategy, coping with disruption or stress management, all of those different topics. So yeah, a really fascinating library that we're constantly filming and accessing out to our global networks. It's a really exciting place to be, because I know we get lots of emails from our clients who say that, this expert from Cirque du Soleil or this professor from London Business School or this Olympic coach, their advice has really helped me to do this in my life. And I guess we're an exchange vehicle, if you like, between the 1% top performers and everybody else that's trying to become one. So knowledge share, I guess, is a great place to be at the moment.
That's amazing. And if the listeners want to be a member, how do they access it?
Yeah, well, it's all available at sportingedge.com. So we've got a membership page there, and you can subscribe to it. It's a monthly subscription. You can cancel at any time, and you can stream the videos in Zoom calls and Microsoft Teams. So it's proving very popular with businesses as well. So yeah, sportingedge.com is the place to go.
That's great. And also for the listeners to check out the Inside the Mind of Champions. It's a really insightful and really interesting podcast as well that you also do.
Yeah, again, we've got all these interviews and it's great to be able to showcase that in a free format for listeners. So I started it about a year ago, and I, didn't really expect too much, to be honest, but we've been in the Apple top 10 and, got listeners all over the world. So again, fantastic that, we know that we're helping people with their well-being and their careers and their mindset, because we're getting so many emails and recommendations in. So yeah, thanks for recommending that. I'm glad you're a listener and you enjoy it. Great to hear.
I do very much. Approaching the end here, we have talked, obviously the focus have been on the mindset. But is there something that I haven't asked you that you feel is important to mention?
Well, I guess the big challenge for people at the moment is, leadership as well. Where do leaders take their businesses and their organizations? I think there's so much uncertainty that it would be a mistake for leaders to think they've got to have all the answers. So I guess there's two things. First of all, it's to make sure that within your team, you're asking great questions and delegating to your team, because it might be that somebody in your team has got a better answer than you on this particular topic, because they know the market, they know the competition, they know the clients better than you do as the leader of the business. So I think trying to, get the business to solve the problem is a really good sort of mindset to be in. And it takes the pressure off the leader to always have the perfect answer, because a lot of the future is unknowable. We can't possibly predict where it's going to be. So you can write whatever you want to on a flip chart. That's just a guess, really. And then I think the second thing is surround yourself with great people. Surround yourself with great thinkers, people who will challenge you. We sometimes see people who are low in confidence surrounding themselves with people who say yes to everything and give you praise all the time. But in times of uncertainty and in times when you really want to try and cut through and take advantage of this period, you're really off better knowing the truth and getting some honest feedback. And if people can say to you, I hear what you're saying, but I just don't agree. I think that's going to end with this, this, and this. Or have you considered this if it goes wrong? We need that kind of psychological challenge and mentors around us, so that when we go into our own brain again, we don't think we're right all the time. We're constantly trying to improve, and have a broader perspective as we try and solve these novel problems. So I guess part of these elements are, around our own mindset and taking control of that. But it's also for us to think about our influence within our families and our communities and our businesses to try and help other people to thrive. And again, delegating a bit and surrounding yourself with good people is probably a good combination there.
That's great advice. And it's the classic saying that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah. Well, that's the case. Yeah. And again, with this virtual world, you don't have to be in the room with people. You don't have to hire people and, work with them every day. I think, there are lots of people that in your network that probably if you just, reached out, tried to meet them for a virtual call for 30 minutes or a, coffee or whatever it might be, often people are happy to help and share some advice. And I think it's just often the courage to reach out to them and make that connection. So the high performers do that. And I think we can all take a leaf out of their book.
Definitely. So the last question that I ask everyone is, if you could choose the next guest on my podcast, who do you think that I should talk to?
Whew, that's a good one. I would get a futurist, somebody who is going to teach you about the future of business and the internet and things like that. I think that's a fascinating space because, we've seen that social media is moving so quickly. We've seen that business has changed fundamentally through this pandemic. We all expect to sit at home, go on a website, click some products, and we expect them to arrive the next day in our home. So I think the expectation of the consumer has changed so much, which is pushing the businesses to innovate really quickly. And I think if you can interview somebody who sees all of those trends, and can advise us what's coming next, then it could be a really good interview.
For sure. I will look out for some futurists, see if there are any in the sporting world.
I'm sure.
Jeremy Snape, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast.
Absolute pleasure. Great to see you.
Thank you for listening to Sports Management Podcast. Do you have thoughts or ideas about this podcast, or do you know someone that I should interview next? Please reach out to me on sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or visit my website sportsmanagementpodcast.com. If you prefer social media, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram @sportsmpodcast.